We're speaking to Dr. Philip Frankel. He's just written a book, Falling Ground, and it's got an important subheading, Human Approaches to Mine Safety. We have statistics coming through that give us the idea that we are really beating this problem. Firstly, are we beating the problem? And secondly, how genuine are these statistics?
We are on the road to resolving the problem. Having said that, the industry has committed itself to eliminate all accidents and injuries, or at least the great majority of accidents and certainly deaths by 2013. That's the standard which was determined by a meeting of the main CEOs of over 30 companies about 2-3 years ago, and that's the milestone at which we have to look. In terms of that, I suspect we're not going to get there.
We've got to achieve this. It's imperative.
Sure. There are many reasons. I mean, half of my book is about the problems. There's dozens of pages on what the problems are. There's something wrong with the culture. And by the culture, we mean the mindsets, the behavior, the attitudes, the perceptions, the social relationships in the mines. There are some companies who've moved very assertively ahead. But there are some companies who say they've moved very assertively ahead, and when you go and look very carefully at the sociology of their mine and their organizational structures, you're reminded of something which is, if I might put it very bluntly, the apartheid years. The problem is behavior is being addressed in the wrong way. What we've done here is that we've basically taken models for behavior-based safety from places like Canada, Australia, the other advanced industrial economies, and we've presumed that all you've got to do is bring them to South Africa and make them work. The fact of the matter is it's quite the opposite of that. Our workforce is different. We're not Canadian workers. Our history of management labor relations in this country is different. Using behavior-based safety in that way, simply taking it and putting it in the Northwest or in Limpopo and presuming it's just going to take, is quite frankly nonsensical. The science of behavior in the mining industry says conclusively in just about every book that I've read that you have to have a certain level of organizational maturity before you can expect a behavioral intervention to work. In other words, you've got to have some basic level of coherence between management and labor. You've got to have a certain trust between management and labor. You've got to have accountability, a sense of fairness. If you've got nothing like that, and believe me, there are many mines in South Africa which don't have anything like that, then spending money on behavior-based safety, even if it were appropriate, is a waste of time.
So what formula do you have to accelerate this and to give us an assurance that we're going to get to the zero harm?
The problem, to a great degree, does not lie with the operators at the bottom. It's an organizational problem which reflects the whole organizational structure, and above all, it's a senior management problem. Every senior manager will tell you today that he's bought into zero harm. In actual fact, many speak the language of zero harm but don't really believe in it. The driving force is production. And when you get to this tension between production and safety, 99% out of the time, it's your production target. And that's because your corporate people are breathing down the neck of your mine manager, who's breathing down the neck of the shift boss, who's breathing down the neck of the supervisor, right down to operator level, and breathing down everyone's neck are the investors. But the problem is a lot of our senior management are simply not walking the talk. The talk is there, the walk is not. We've got at this point in time roughly 38 fatalities per year. We've also got 3,000 reportable injuries. And I emphasize reportable injuries. That means the ones that are reported, and yet we have very poor reporting systems. We need to focus on the fatalities. Fatality risk management, setting fatality standards. And I'm not saying ignore the lost time injuries. The fatalities are important things. Get the fatalities down, and the international vision of South Africa will change. Get the fatalities down, and more senior management will really start to believe that you can do something about that. Our supervisors, almost to a man, and we're not talking race here, we're not talking white, black, old, new generation, do not have behavioral competency. Now, what I'm saying, in other words, we've got guys who are good at moving rock, although they're less good than they used to be. They've got the technical skills, but they're not good at moving people. They can't motivate. They can't handle conflict. When they see a high-risk situation coming along, they don't know how to communicate. Or sometimes they don't want to communicate because there's a production bonus, which everyone shares in. Yet we do not have enough engagement. We do not have managers who can go down and who can do visible, felt leadership properly. Sure, we get guys who go down, once a week now, which is a hell of a lot more than they used to 6 months ago or 6 years ago. But they have no presence in the workplace. They go down, they have a cup of tea with a supervisor. The supervisor takes them to the stope, which has been cleaned up in advance because there's no surprise visit. The manager doesn't know how to talk to the operator. The operator doesn't want to talk to the manager, not because he's hostile, but because the manager hasn't talked to him for the 40 years that he's been on the mine, and he's beginning to wonder, what is the agenda here? Most of our accident investigations today are about who to blame. We've got a huge blame culture. You're talking about organizations here which are seriously underdeveloped. We've got great laws, but they don't work in the workplace. The state has to start seriously looking at building capacity in the DMR. We just simply haven't got inspectors who know what we're doing. And 3/4 of the closures that occur these days are for trifling matters and occur simply because the inspector doesn't know what to do. They don't know what to do because the mining companies won't give them geological information to analyze an accident. It's commercially valuable that you've got the law which says that people have a right to do this, but they are obliged to work at risk because of the driving force of production. In fact, what we're doing through our production bonus, which is the difference between a marginal existence for a worker and a reasonable living wage, is we are rewarding bad behavior. We're saying mine at risk, mine more quickly. And that, interestingly enough, occurs even more after a mine has been closed down. I think closing mines is a very powerful message to the industry that the state is now taking this very seriously. But the consequence of closing a mine, or a shaft even, is enormous. You close down for 2 weeks. To reinvigorate or restart that production process is an incredibly difficult business. It's an expensive business, and it's an even more dangerous business because people have now got targets they've got to reach in half the time. So they'll take more risks.
We've got to do something here.
There's an argument, for example, that we need more mechanization. So what's the worst that's going to happen when a roof falls in? You're going to lose a 10 million rand piece of equipment, which is preferable to losing one life. Ideally, what you need in the mining industry is what we have in the armed forces, not ours, others. I've worked with the armed forces as well, and what you need in a modern technological era, you need a small workforce, highly specialized, highly skilled, backed up with sophisticated machinery, guys who know what they're doing, who understand safety, the importance of it. That's what you ideally need. We've got to try and get there. Some people say mechanization. Mechanization's great, but at a time when the mining industry is shedding jobs all over the place, I don't think it's politically feasible beyond a certain point. Mechanization is not the be-all and end-all. And the coal mining industry, for example, at least in the bigger mines, is almost totally mechanized. You're working with soft rock in shallow mines. You shouldn't have an accident.
What about places like Peru where you go? Aren't they also in the same boat as we are?
A lot of the problems they have in Peru are very similar to ours. The cultural problem. Your management in Peru, in your mines there, is largely Hispanic-oriented and Eurocentric. Your workers are American Indian. You have the same kind of tensions. They also don't have as good a legislation as we do. For example, their mines can't be closed if there's a fatality or if there's a potential fatality. Ours can. And that's part of the problem. We have the legislation. It's on the books there. But the fact of the matter is it's difficult to implement, lack of inspectors. It's difficult to implement politically because the mines are a very powerful group and you can't push them too far. It's difficult to implement because the mines don't often comply. And you've got to ask yourself then, if the mining house doesn't comply with the legislation, why on earth should you expect an operator or supervisor to? Non-compliance becomes the way we do things. If your senior management condones rule breaking, if your senior management gives you production rewards in order to take risks, you can't expect the people at the bottom to respect the rules, to respect the authority. So a lot of it comes down to your senior management. Your senior management has to really set the agenda, believe in the agenda, push that agenda day and night. If the management doesn't do that, you're not going to solve this.
We've been talking to Dr. Philip Frankel. He's been researching this for decades. He's come out with his own publication. He says we can be safe. South Africa has just got to be safe.